Hey, welcome back to Diabolic Shrimp, the least professional talk show on the internet. I'm your host, best-selling author and comic creator Josh Grant, and video game designer now. I started designing a video game just recently. But it's so great to have you on the show. This is a live show, so if you're catching this live, thank you for being here. If you want to ask questions of our guests, over there in the live chat, we love to be interactive with you. I love to bring your questions up. We love to put our guests in the hot seat, and so we have an awesome guest today and a bonus guest. So we have Carl Paolino, and he's worked on all sorts of stuff. I'll introduce him in just a second here. Bonus guest as well, Robert Ottone, who's been on the show before. You can check out some of those videos previously on the channel. But thanks for being here. Before we get there, just a quick word from our highlighted books. Today's highlighted book actually is one of mine. Since we're talking comics today, I'm also a best-selling author of comics, and so I just wanted to highlight The Lost Boy, which is a dramatic retelling of Peter Pan, where Peter becomes a vigilante crime fighter. So if you want to check out some of these cool crime fighting superhero comics, you can always check out my books as well in the description over there. I had to plug my book because we're talking comics today, and Carl, who we're talking to, has just released a comic. It's already a bestseller. It's already a #1 bestseller. It's fantastic. I'm actually about to drop my review for it just here in the next couple days. So just a bit about Carl before I bring him on. Carl Paolino, and I know I'm butchering your name, Carl. I'm sorry. He's hiding in the wings down there. Carl is a veteran of the entertainment industry. As producer, director, screenwriter, and production designer, his credits include, get this, feature films, television series, music videos, Broadway shows, and hundreds of television commercials. Some of the shows he has created products for include Disney's Hercules on Ice, Goosebumps, the musical, MTV's 2000 Music Video Awards, Saturday Night Live, Cartoon Sushi, and Coca-Cola's Monster of the Gridiron. And if that's just not enough, this is the one that tickles me, Giddy, just a bit. His animated productions include MTV's Celebrity Deathmatch. I used to watch that all the time when I was younger, as well as Celebrity Face Off, also a stop-motion animated TV series. He wrote and directed the animation for the Halloween Pranksta with co-producer Mark Hamill of Star Wars fame, and directed Mark through the voiceover recordings. He is the author of the pulp horror novel trilogy titled Virgin Falls. Spontania is his first graphic novel series, and it is published by his company, Comic Book Kid Publishing. And if you want to check out any of his books, they're actually down there in the description below, as well as Comic Book Kid Publishing, if you want to get in touch with Carl. He has a BFA degree from School of Visual Arts and is an adjunct professor in the Fine Arts Department. Woo! All right, well, we don't often get the intro where there's like 30 things that he's done, but we're going to talk all about his comics today. He's been waiting in the wings here. We also have Robert Ottone, who's worked with Carl on some of his comics and is also a wonderful author of horror short stories. So let's bring them on. Carl and Rob, welcome to Diabolic Shrimp.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Hey-o.
Well, it is so great just to have you. Like I said, I'm talking to the legend over here, as well as Carl. No, welcome back, Rob. It's good to have you back on. So Carl, I always think a great way to introduce people, since Rob's already been on here, but we're introducing you. I always think it's great to introduce people through a bit of show and tell. Did you happen to bring us anything for show and tell?
Yeah, I brought a friend of mine from one of the animated series I've done. So,
oh, no way.
There. Let's put in here. So that's a stop motion puppet, and his mouth moves and his arms move. Everything's made out of foam rubber. So when we did Celebrity Deathmatch, they were very similar to this. I actually introduced foam rubber puppets to MTV at the time because originally they were like all being made out of clay,
like claymation.
Bend them, and they wanted to, sever their heads and cut off their arms. And the biggest problem was that every time an animator works with something like this, they have to grab the puppet and they got to move it and bend it. And the problem was when it's made of clay, it just like falls apart very easily. So I introduced foam rubber puppets into the system so that we can get more life out of them before they get, killed.
Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. It's just kind of surreal to me because I used to just watch, like, Celebrity Deathmatch, like, all the time when me and my brothers used to it. It's just so much fun to actually see this. And I had no idea that they weren't claymation. So that's kind of part of the fun of that. So,
Well, most
so,
claymation in general, it's become like a term that they use anytime the
mhm.
character has to morph into something else or just bend or twist into something else. But most clay characters are made of harder substances, like clays that actually are baked and they're hard plastic, and you can paint them and detail them and whatnot. But a lot of parts are still clay, so they can be exaggerated and you can have more fun with it. So it's kind of like a trade name that we've been using for decades now.
Oh, that's just too much fun though. So you'll just have to make, like, your own in your free time. You can start doing some stop motion with them or something. And so that's too much fun. Well, you have this, like, storied career, right? And here I'm going to show really quick. Your comic, of course, is Spontania, so you can kind of see it there for our viewers. And we're going to dive more into this just a bit later because this is your newest work and this is what you're on, kind of showing off today. But let's pull it back just a bit and kind of get the how you got there. And so like, yeah, I know we're gonna go through your entire career. No, it's just a couple of questions, like, but so let's talk. I mean, we have to talk Celebrity Deathmatch, right? And so, like, because of course, like, I mean, that's just like, for me, it's just like when I saw that you did that, I was like, what? It's like, because that was a big part of my childhood. So, like, how did that, like, come about for you? Like, how did you get like, I don't know, where'd that come from? Where did you get wrapped into this?
Well, growing up, back in the day, we didn't have. I'm a little older than you guys, and back in the day, we didn't have all the video streaming and everything that you could see today. So we used to stay up late at night. We used to watch the Ray Harryhausen movies, Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, Jason and the Argonauts, and I just fell in love with stop motion in general. So I went to college, an art college. I studied animation, sculpting, painting, and that's where the interest came from. So from there, I've always wanted to do a stop motion series. And funny story was this. I started doing TV commercials. I'm very good at creating things, making things with my hands. So 9/11 comes along. And just prior to that, I had a very successful television um, business where I make a lot of props, costumes, miniatures, models, makeup, special effects. And then 9/11 comes along and the industry in New York City ended. I mean, it just got really quiet.
Wow.
So I created a new series. I was able to pitch it. And we got a second series off the ground, which was similar to Celebrity Deathmatch. And that's where Mel Gibson comes from. So we did a lot of parodies, basically, and created a lot of different characters. I'm trying to. The camera's in reverse, so I'm like going in the wrong
Yeah, I know.
direction.
That's like every time I had to point at the live chat, I'm like,
Go
it's
that way.
over here somewhere.
So,
So,
so basically, I've just done a lot of things. It's really funny, you talk to people and they all expect like you worked on all the big features that they see in the theater. And the truth is, I've had a 40-year career working on hundreds of TV commercials, TV series. One of the few things I do once in a while is I'll do a prop for Saturday Night Live. Recently, I did a large platter of butter. So like, and this was like a throwaway gag. They would like, the character would be doing the news and he'd say, we had a 20-pound box of butter and he would just pull it up like this, show it to the audience and toss it. But that they had to have the butter and they couldn't use real butter because it would be sitting around on set and it would be heavy and it would be melted. So I made a silicone slab of butter that was like just this big. So,
it's not, it's nice that I have a butter guy, it's like, oh yeah, I need a butter prop. We got to call the butter guy. Let's get Carl up here. So
well,
that's,
places like NBC, what they have is they have a huge storage, a huge warehouse where they call up and they say, we're looking for a large slab of butter. And usually props come along at the last second, like around a Thursday night, because they know they need it on Saturday night. So Thursday night, they get a call and go, sorry, we don't have any butter. And then I usually get a call and they say, how soon could you make a large slab of butter that won't melt? So that's usually what my career's been like. Everybody waits to the very
so,
end to do special effects or props or
mm,
miniatures or models, and you get a call at the last second, and you just gotta, you make a career out of it.
Well, and I was like, and that has to be kind of fun. I mean, it's got to be stressful at the time, but it's one of those fun things to look back on. I'm sure it's like, I'm sure at the time it's like, what, I got to make this, and you just got to go, you know. But like, so looking back, like, what would you say? What would you say is like one of the like weirder requests that you've gotten for like, we need this?
Oh, you mean like at the last second? Almost anything at the last second, because the first thing you realize is there's no sleeping from the time you get the call until the time you deliver the product. And
Yeah.
that's what you remember most, like not sleeping for 40 hours straight, something like that. But weird props I've made, I don't know. I've gotten some calls, usually from NYU students who are thesis students and they're graduating and they need some really crazy thing. I've made just about everything you could possibly imagine.
The antlers.
Oh, the antlers. Thank you for reminding me. One of the music videos for
Fallout Boy's Sugar We're Going Down. He made
Oh,
the
no way.
Boy.
No way.
I got to put them on.
Yeah. Like, I want you to do that next time, Rob. Like next time you're on the show, I want to see like, I want to see some antlers here.
Anything you want. Happy to put them on.
Oh, Rob, you don't say anything you want. This show will get too crazy. So Rob, by the way, is always so great. He's I gotta make Rob like my moderator. So he's like, he always gets this before I do. Robert Ottone says, thank you everybody for watching. Feel free to ask questions here. I forgot to put that up there. Again, I know some people just tuned in. So if you're watching this live, throw some questions over there in the live chat. We're happy to put Carl in the hot seat here.
That's not Rob, that's Carl. I gotta do this. This is weird.
Yeah. it's over in the live chat. Put it in the live chat, and if you want Carl to make you a tub of butter, then he'll give one away. Maybe, I don't know. so definitely put it in. If you're catching this later, by the way, throw those questions down there in the comments, and I'd happily pass them along to either Rob or to Carl. And so, all right, so let's keep cruising along here. So you make all these crazy props and characters and all these things. And so, like, was there a particular episode or character that you're most proud of over the course of your career? Because that's so many things. So it doesn't have to be like the what you want. By the way, welcome Truth 719 brother. Well, that happens to be my brother. So brother, it's good to see you. This is my brother, Sever Truth. He's very creative. He's a voice actor. He was in my trailer for my one of my comics as well, and he and I used to watch Celebrity Deathmatch together. So he's it's great to have you, brother, on here. But yeah, Carl,
the audience tonight with the Celebrity Deathmatch. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, honestly, it's like, well, it's just because it's just so, for me, I'm like, it's just so much fun. And then also the regular comic crew, I was like, we're going to definitely talk best-selling comics here. But was there like a particular episode or character like that you've kind of created over time that like was one that you're most proud of?
Well, let me throw this out because I think this ties into whole Celebrity Deathmatch. Periodically, we would make a lot of characters that never ended up on the screen. And it took me a while to figure out what had happened. And eventually, MTV will filter down the story. But at the time when we first started Celebrity Deathmatch, there was, I'm trying to think, it was Star Trek The Next Generation was one of the hit shows on TV. So they decided to write some episodes with Captain Picard and various characters on Star Trek. And I was like, oh my God, we're doing Star Trek characters. This is the best. So we made a bunch of characters. And one of them was, I think we put Patrick Stewart in a tutu. So he was like Patrick Stewart from the waist up and from the waist down. He was like a ballerina. I don't know what it was about. I never got the scripts. So I don't know what it was about. But right after we handed off the puppets, and they were beautiful looking puppets, they were told, they canceled that episode. And I was like, why? What happened? Apparently someone who was attached to Paramount, because MTV is owned by Paramount. Paramount produced Star Trek The Next Generation, said, you better not make fun of us. We don't like this idea.
Oh,
That's
no.
what it was all about, was making fun of characters.
I think you were predicting the future though, because I saw Patrick Stewart in his like lobster costume, so
wow.
you weren't too far off the mark here. So, but yeah, no, I definitely connect with you. I do a little bit of freelancing. I was working for a company on a project that I can't talk about, but but it was another one of those things. Like you get that so often in the entertainment industry where it's like you write like characters and you pour your love into them, and then they're like, it's been shelved or whatever. And so, yeah. So truth, by the way, says, I love that show. My friends and I used to make bets on that show. And so,
who's going to win? We used to hear about that on a regular basis. In fact, what they used to do is not tell anybody who's going to win the fight until like the last second. It's like, oh, okay, you got a barroom pool going on. Like who's gonna beat?
Who's gonna win? Like Carl or Paramount? Who's gonna get like good old Patrick Stewart out there? No, he also said my favorite was Tyler versus Jagger. That's what apparently. So.
There was also an episode with what was it? Leo DiCaprio was fighting Jack Nicholson. If I remember that right. And I met Leo at a production meeting, and he was just so excited because he killed me. I loved it. Like he had no problem losing the fight. He was a real gentleman, very nice guy.
Well, and so this is something I'm. Let's go into our next question here, because that kind of like ties into it. It's like you made tons of products for all the big names like Goosebumps and Disney on Ice and Saturday Night Live, right? It's like, what was what do you feel when you see your work out there? And this is even tying into now with like Spontania, which we're going to get to in just a second. It's like,
Sure.
It's like when you actually see this thing that you just like, I don't know, in your brain, it was there and you kind of made it come to be, and then you see it up there on the screen or whatever. It's like, what are you feeling?
You're going to be disappointed in the answer, because a lot of times these were like rush jobs. And we had just so many days to go out, shop for all the materials and supplies, make sure I got my crew together, and they're not going home till we're done. And then we plow through it. And sometimes it's like a commercial will come up, and I'll see it and go, oh God, no. I'm just like, I'm so over it.
I was gonna say, is it relief? Because that's how I feel when I'm doing a comic book, and I've it's like, it's the coolest thing ever while I'm working on the comic book, because it's like I'll get art back. Like I'll do all the art that no one will ever see, and I give it over to Laszlo, my artist, and he makes it look pretty. But and it's like, and so he'll be sending me stuff, and I'm like, oh yes, I'm so excited. And then it's like 3 months later, because we've been working on this thing for 3 months, and I've been looking at these things over and over again, and I'm like pasting it together and doing all the formatting. So when I finally get it out there, I'm like, it's like, I mean, it's kind of neat when you actually have the physical copy and you just kind of stare at it. But at the same time, like, I'm usually on to the next thing by that point. So I was like, I kind of feel relief when it's out there. I'm like, it's done. I can move on.
Well, again, it's like a lot of mixed feelings. So when we did Disney, worked for Disney, I did Disney on Ice, the Hercules characters. We made these large heads. We did like Hades and what was it? Pain and Panic were the two that went along with Hades. And we got free tickets to the show. So I brought my kids, who were kind of young at the time, and they just like, like, hey, no, look, that's Daddy's stuff. And they were like, it's like, ice shows are what they are. Everybody skates around in a circle. They have an argument. Oh yeah, try to get me. And then they skate around in a circle because you can't go anywhere. I mean, I never quite understood the logic behind an ice show if you were going to do something like that, because you can't go anywhere. You can't really do anything. They brought out a great monster that I didn't work on. It was like a 15-foot creature, and it just kind of like walked out, it shuffled out on the ice, and then it turned around and went back into its cave. And I'm like, that's the best thing I've ever seen. And, it just came and went. An ice show is what it is. If you love ice skating, that's for you. But like I said, you're going to be disappointed in my reactions. A lot of times.
I was going to say, there's going to be no Spontania on ice, I guess. So it's been nixed already by this point. So let's see. Truth also says, do you have any of the characters used on Celebrity Deathmatch? Well, Carl showed off the one that was used on Celebrity Face Off, and so that was the other one you had, right? Celebrity Face Off is the
no, I'd like to say that I had a whole bunch of them, but I don't. I wish I did, but at the time, Paramount sends over a contract, and I'm not kidding, it's about that thick.
Mm.
And you can't read it. You just go to the last page, you sign it, you send it back, but basically they own everything. That's what it's like working for Paramount, probably for Disney and several other places. So
it's deep in that contract. It says like no Patrick Stewart and tutus, and so it was a deal breaker. So all right, well here let's get into your writing a bit. I mean, you've wrote all sorts of stuff, so it's like, but I know both of you because I want to toss some questions here to Rob as well, because Rob helped work on one of the issues of Spontania and working on some of the op-eds at the end, which we'll talk about, because I thought that was a really creative touch for a comic. And so, but you both have a background in horror, right? And I also have a background in horror, like you kind of both wrote like a horror series. I started by writing a horror series. So why did you start writing in that genre, and like what made you kind of transition into comics?
Oh, okay. Well, the simple answer was monsters. I mean, you could get the most out of a monster. You know, a monster's doing what a monster does, and you could get the humor out of it. You could get the pathos. You could get everything out of this creature that's basically being hunted by the humans and the nice people and the normal people. And I think there's a lot more fun in that than anything else. So the comic book, I mean, I think when we get to Spontania, I'll be happy to like really launch there. You mentioned the piece that I had Rob write, which is the op-ed. That's become an ongoing thing. He just finished the third one? Yeah. The third op-ed for the third issue. Now, I know Rob has a background in journalism, and my immediate instinct was, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could do like a segment, like a, you know, what we call it? The reporter was
that he was almost like a J. Jonah Jameson,
yes,
sort of like a pundit kind of thing. That's sort of what I was looking to do. And I thought that would be a lot of fun to sort of like, you have this beautiful, vibrant, colorful world, and then sort of give it this like almost very snarky, very cynical look at what's actually going on behind the scenes of all of these big sort of comic book moments, but sort of look at the truth or try to figure out the truth of what's going on behind the scenes. So that's like the perfect like catalyst for that is thinking, well, J. Jonah Jameson, like, yes, Spider-Man saved the city, but at the same time, like, he's a ruffian in a mask.
So, yeah, he's a menace.
Exactly. That's kind of what I wanted to do with the writing. So hopefully that.
And you definitely achieved that. I was like, I haven't got my review up for Spontania yet, but I got it written out and everything. And I just thought that was actually a really fun touch to have that at the end. And you definitely achieved that, Rob, just that tone and everything. I can definitely tell you were channeling your inner J. Jonah. I was trying to grab it. It's too far away. Anytime I go to Comic-Con, I dress up as J. Jonah Jameson and I yell at all the Spider-Man. I got my cigar and everything, and I'm like, "You're a menace," you know. And so anytime, so if you go to Comic-Con, anyone that's watching out there, don't dress up as Spider-Man, because I will be coming for you. You know, it's like I yell at all of them, you know, and yelled at some lady's kid who was dressed up as Spider-Man, and they did not get the reference. I was like, "Your child is a menace," and she's like, "Give me the death eyes." I'm like, "Okay, I'm sorry." It's like it's part of the show, I promise. So, all right, well, speaking of like, you know, yeah, my good brother, he said, I was there for that. It's like, yeah, we both go Comic-Con together. So I got the proof.
You go to the San Diego Comic-Con, right?
No, I'm out towards Colorado, so we hit the Colorado ones, and so
cool.
and so, but so let's look at all talking about Spider-Man a bit. I was like, you definitely had a little bit of at that heart of Spider-Man. Spider-Man's one of my favorites. You can actually see back here. You can see Spider-Man hanging out on the wall over here. And so let's talk. I'm gonna put up some of these comic pages here. Let me see if I can make this larger for our audience. And so that's a little bit larger. And so let me see if I can like filter through some of my. There we go. And so let's talk a little bit about Spontania. We can see Spontania here a little bit, and I hope you guys can see it on your screen. I know it can be a bit small. And so let's look at the first issue here, and I'm going to kind of filter through some of the pages, and we can just talk all about Spontania. So before we jump into the beautiful art, because it's got gorgeous art, it's got gorgeous coloring, just the production value alone. I was like, Carl called me up just a few weeks ago and was like talking comics, because I'm also a best-selling comic creator, and he was showing me his work, and I was so blown away by your work, Carl, because I was like, I don't know anything you can learn from me. I was like, I need to take notes from you, because this is just like fantastic production all around. And so Carl, just tell us a little bit about like this exciting new like superhero, like in creating a new superhero, like what's it about in general, and then like what kind of spurred you on to create this character?
Okay, well, like we have to go back to the early COVID years when you're home and you just don't know what to do with yourself because you can't go to concerts and stores are being closed left and right. And I started thinking in terms of something I always wanted to do. I've been a comic reader and collector for a very long time, and this is something I've always wanted to do. And I thought, I could do this at home. I could come up with something. I could find my production staff. Online, which is what I did. The artwork of this, I appreciate what you say about it. But I have to give Mauricio Vargas a shout out. This is his work. He not only illustrated it, but he colored the first issue as well. And he's just an amazing artist. And I found him online, and we hit it off really well. And as we continued from here, I brought in more artists, more colorists. I have actually an international crew at this point. I've got people working for me in Mexico, Argentina, South Africa, Italy, and then here in the States, a couple of different places. My primary place of business is out in Long Island in New York, and which is where I am now with Rob. And I was constantly, we had about 10 different covers until we decided on the one that you see. Because the question was, what is the best cover for the first issue? How do you really grab people? How do you explain a lot of things that are going on? And what I like about this cover is since you are a Spider-Man fan, Spider-Man number 55, there's a close-up of Doc Ock, and in his eyeglasses, you could see Spider-Man fighting the tentacles. And I thought, oh, what a great intro to the two main characters, which is Elkie on the left and Marsha on the right, who become good friends in the process of creating the Spontania character. Spontania is really a group of young people in their late teens to late 20s. And basically what the story is about is what's going on today, where you have a techno dystopia being created by the billionaire class who answer to no one. And, we see the rocket ships that take William Shatner into the stratosphere and return him safely. But what we don't see is all the mistakes, all the errors, all the things that nobody wants you to see, because there are some. You just know.
I was like, well, watch enough Blue Origin and you can see a decent amount of them. Yeah, I always follow all the space ones, but there's been enough. No, I was just joking.
So the idea was to create a town which is tranquility, and a lot of tech companies move in and they answer to no one, and they're creating all sorts of weird things. You could see there's a character in the center there. We'll call her the crustacean because she's got this crab backpack and these mechanical arms come out, and that's where the whole thing goes on, that she continues to steal these devices because no one is watching. And each of them have a purpose. You could use them for underwater exploration, or you could use them to hurt people. So it's like, it's Prometheus. It's, here's fire. What are you going to do with it? You can use it to cook your food, have light at night in a cave, and protect yourself, or you're going to hurt people with it. So it's that very old story coming back.
Well, I was like, I love, it's like, you kind of really hit it on the head, because you talked about like wanting to connect back with like some of those earlier days in comics. And I know that this is something you and I talked about too. And that was something I loved about it, is like, it's like hitting back to like the heart of some of these comics. Like comics kind of got started as not the word I'm looking for, not criticism, but like a kind of a social commentary in a way, and kind of look at some of these things. And you like all your great heroes kind of started with this like like, you know, you had these like companies and they were like, you know, someone fell into the vat of ooze, or it was like science experiment gone wrong. And it was like, it was a good look at morality and like, and individuality
Well,
in those early days.
they were a reaction to like the rapid growth of you know, sort of corporate, you know, post-war worry, right? So, you know, the fear of technology after the atom bomb, you know, so you're going to see fear of chemicals and all of that stuff. It's in film, it's in comics, it's all over. So yeah, you're spot on.
Yeah. Well, it's just like, go ahead.
There was also something else that was going on in the 60s. To me, I think the 60s was the biggest revolution in comics. I mean, there's a lot of things going on every couple of years. You sit there and you go, this is new, this is different. But to me, in the 60s, when I was growing up and buying these comic books for 12 cents each, my father never called them comic books. He called them joke books. And when he was a kid, that's what they were called because it was obvious that it was a joke. You know, the man with the wings on his feet, he could fly, he could breathe underwater. What the hell is that? That's a joke. So, but to me, these things were real. These things they were coming, they were in the future. And what I really loved about the difference between the books from the 60s and if you just go back to the 50s or the 40s was the word count. You know, you could sit there and on two hands, you could count the amount of words there were on a page. And I said, you know, then you look at the early Spider-Man, they were like 300, 350 words a page. And I thought, that's a real book. And I thought, that's what I wanted to get back to. More dialogue, more interaction, more interesting characters, a lot of depth to what's going on, where they're going, why they're doing it, you know, this whole thing.
Yeah, and what I thought was cool is like, because when I first got into comics, I'm also a comic creator, but I was like, I started with novels, and so I was so used to write as much as you like, and then you could pull it back. And I was so shocked when I got into comic world because it's like oh, like, you know, every word I'm putting on there is taking up space, and like, how much space do I have? And I wasn't really sure at first, and so I tried to look into, you know, I looked at modern comics, and I'm like trying to count the words, and I'm like, oh, you can only get like maybe 42 on a page, you know, and like, and then I looked at the older ones, and because I liked a lot of the older ones growing up too. And it's like Spider-Man and X-Men and some of the older renditions of those. And I was like, and I loved how you could tell more story and there's more dialogue and like, and so I loved how you put that in here. It's like, because you really can like here I'm of course not going to show your whole comic. If people are really interested in checking out Spontania, check it out in the description there. You can find links to it, but I do want to show like kind of what you're talking about here, Carl. Like look at this. You can still have all this gorgeous art over here, but like but there's so much dialogue in there, and that's and what I love about it is you have a great balance, because it's not a bad thing to have like a lot of dialogue. So many people here like, oh yeah, there's just too much, you know, it gets too wordy or something, and like, but no, this is like fantastic how it has like, I loved like something I really loved about you know, Elke's character is like, and this is what I love about Spider-Man too, especially back in the earlier days. You get a lot of her thoughts, and you get a lot of her like, I love her humor in the fights and everything. And so like, you got some great like one-liners in there too, but then you kind of pull it back a little bit later. And I'm not going to show the whole comic because I want people to check it out through your website and through buying it through Amazon or whatever. And so, but it kind of pulls it back, and you get to kind of see her as a person, and it's a good like comic origin story. So you got this like great balance in there. So let's talk about like her though, like Elke, and building her character, and like not only just like it's just her and like her superhero persona. Like, how do you go about designing the comic in general? Did you start with her character and go from there, or was it like, I have this overarching story and I need a character to drive that? Or was it like, I don't know, how involved are you in like designing the character? Because I'll do costume design. I used to be an actor and I used to do costume design, so it's like, I'll do costume design. Like do you do any like the design, or do you say like, here, artist, this is kind of what I'm going for, like go for it?
Well,
so,
yeah.
Sorry, that's a lot.
No, it's not a lot at all. There were just so many, there were so many things you said I wanted to touch upon, but we only have an hour, so I didn't want to do too much. But as far as writing the comic, that was the other thing I was very interested in, is for example, the page that you have up here, I think it's the second page or the third page, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 panels up there. I would actually write dialogue for every panel. And what's going on in the panel, I would also describe. I wanted this to be very exact. And when it came to the costume, I can illustrate, but I'm not as good as Mauricio. Mauricio is a master. He is an absolute master illustrator. But I told him in words what I was looking for. I wanted the costume to be blue and white. I wanted the DNA logo across the chest and across the back. I wanted the visor. I mean, I was very specific on what I was looking for. So, it's kind of an interesting balance back and forth. Mauricio is just great at interpreting exactly what you're looking for. I've worked with so many artists in my life, and you could be very exact and say, this is what I want. And they'll give you something totally different. And in their minds, it's the same thing. And you're sitting there going, but it's not even the same color. I mean, it's so far off. But he really nailed everything we had. One thing you mentioned was about the thought balloons. As I was in the process of writing this, I was pitching it to a friend of mine who's also a comic book writer. And the first thing he said was, you're using thought balloons. Nobody does that anymore. And I thought, why not? It's the coolest thing. It's like you get to see 2 different sides of the actor, of the character, what they're saying to the person in front of them. And meanwhile, in their head, they're going, I'm in trouble. I got to get out of here. Things like this, kind of things we do all the time when we're going about doing whatever it is we're doing. The character, I came up with the idea of somebody having this ability, a natural ability where they can look into your eyes and they just get all the little nuances of what your next physical action is going to be. And I spoke to a chess champion, and when I was explaining this about the chess game, that she knew nothing about chess, but she was able to beat Marsha, who's a really good chess player, simply by watching her eyes and figuring out her moves. And what the chess player told me was, we do that all the time. So here I am thinking I'm inventing something, when there are people who do this. And then it was a combination of things. We're going to introduce in the second issue the 2 people who work for the tech companies who suspect something's wrong. They wanted to create a fabric that could absorb shock so that in car accidents, less people get hurt or killed. And they put it to use creating this Spontania character. Elke is a great kid, but she's kind of clueless. And that's really the best part about her. She's jumping into this and doesn't really have a clue what she's jumping into, but she's surrounded by a group of people that have helped her get that far. So that was really how the whole journey began. And it was just write another issue. And then as the artists did their work, I would change this panel, change that panel, figure out where the dialogue goes. The lettering, by the way, I have to give a shout out to Mika Myers. Mika is an amazing letterer. He works for DC, Marvel. He's worked for everybody. He's an award-winning letterer. And when I heard that, I said, you have to letter my book.
Well, and it's actually something interesting that's especially for people that are watching this, because we have a lot of we all have a lot of authors that will watch this channel, or aspiring authors. And that's something that shocked me when I knew nothing about making comics. I liked comics, but I knew nothing about making them. And it was actually my brother that was in the live chat a little while ago that inspired me to make my first comic. And but I jumped in there and I was like, I'm a novelist and I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to try it out, I guess. And I had no idea there were so many elements. So you have a penciler and an inker, which is often the same person nowadays. And then you have a colorist, and then you have a letterer. I was like, I need somebody to make the letters, and you just don't even know, And so it's interesting to pull together this team and to build this thing. But one of the things I think is kind of cool is you kind of have almost different philosophies of comics. And modern comics tend to be like a movie philosophy. They tried to just have like the movie set, like the big action scene, but then it's like it's mostly just the dialogue you're hearing the people say, and that's how you tell the story through like different shots. Versus what I kind of like about the older comics, and something that you're kind of capturing here is I mean, you definitely have that cinematic feel, and you definitely have like the really awesome visual and the dynamic dialogue, but the older comics were also very much more like read more like a book, and that's something you kind of captured a lot here, where you have a lot of the thoughts and the dialogue, but you can kind of go back and forth and get some of the internal piece. And I thought that was interesting. I was turning the Fifth Ascendant, which is my brick of a fantasy book. I'm turning that into a comic, and so much of that book is the characters' thoughts and their heart and their feelings. And I'm like, when I was turning it into a comic, I'm like having to like scrape all this stuff out, and I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm gonna use a thought bubble. I was like, and like you said, they were like, no one does that anymore. But so I was like, well, I'll just go for that, I guess.
So as we got toward the end of the first 22 pages on the first book, I was saying, 22-page book just isn't enough. We needed more stuff. And when I spoke to Rob about it, that's where we came up with the idea of the conspiracy theorist journalist. Yeah. So that's where that came from.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if I can. I'll zip through. I'm gonna go if it freezes on me. Maybe not. I guess we're stuck on this page. And so I'm gonna zip through. You can all see some of the art. It's a nice. There we go. And so the Tranquil Times. Here we go. This is kind of this is Rob's part here. And so Tranquility's longest running newspaper now online. So and it's fun because it looks like a newspaper and everything. And so sorry, Rob, I cut you off. So.
No, it's cool, and it's just interesting. It's fascinating to see the story develop, and it's also, you can make the parallel between the team behind the comic and the team that's in the comic as well, and sort of everybody working towards, the idea of putting out the best possible product. They're trying to create the best possible superhero, and Carl and his team are trying to put out the best possible comic that you can. So it's really fascinating, and just getting to write something that I never have really had the opportunity to write before is a lot of fun. So I get a kick out of being Max Renfield and being like a more likable, conspiracy theorist type guy. It's a lot of fun, and you can be a little pretentious. Like I mentioned Cassandra in this first one, and Max Renfield's very clearly a pretty well-educated guy, and so getting to live in his skin a little bit or live in his keyboard is kind of fun. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah, well, I'm still feeling my J. Jonah here. Like, have I ever told you the story of Cassandra, dear reader? Dear reader, listen to this during the days. So one day when you do the audiobook, I want to be J. Jonah, Max Renfield. And so,
you're on. You got it.
But so going like both of you have these dynamic backgrounds in different kinds of writing, and that so like. You talked a little bit about like Rob, right? You have a little bit of a background in journalism, so it's kind of fun that you get to play this fake journalist, right? It's like for me, I had a background in like acting, so I knew scripts, and I knew like stage design and stuff like that. So like when I went into doing comics, weirdly that all became very useful for me, because I was like, oh, I need to stop thinking less like a writer for a novel and more like a writer for like a script. And so for you, Carl, and for you, Rob, as well, it's like how, like what from your background, like writing from your background translated well to comics, and what from your writing background was like something that was kind of like challenging, that you had to like learn something new.
Oh, you go first.
Okay. So so my background was in screenwriting, which some of my writer friends don't even refer to as writing because it's mostly dialogue. I mean, that's what real screenplays are. It's a lot of dialogue. And if you did your job right, then when you could tell the difference between this character and that character, because the way the words are put together is the way this character speaks. They grew up in Boston, and this character speaks differently because they're first generation from another country. There's a whole different thing going on. So aside from the dialogue, the other thing was the descriptions. And the descriptions in most screenplays are very shallow. It's almost always dialogue way more than description. And when I was in college learning screenwriting, one of the things we always did, we'd sit there and we would just like huge descriptions of the room and the everything. And it's like the teacher would always be like just tearing it out, saying, who cares? It's going to go to the art director, the production designer. They're going to figure out what they're going to do. So to me, it was a way about, it allowed me to be the art director, the production designer, the costume designer, things that I have a lot of experience in. So I was able to write out full descriptions for my illustrators. I knew what colors they were wearing, you know, the way they acted. Sometimes they would even write a description about how they would carry themselves. So I was looking at this comic book, this graphic novel, as a segue to pitch to, you know, a streaming service like, you know, Disney, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, Apple TV. So I wanted the panels to almost look like storyboards. So you could see the action, sometimes a lot of action going on in one panel, taking us to the next panel, taking us to the next panel, which is what I did on purpose. Because again, I see it as a TV series, whether it's live action or animation. I don't care. I'm fine with either. But that's where I would like to see this go. So
claymation. We'll get the claymation in there. And Andrea Hintz, wonderful writer, does a lot of like vocal and sound production stuff, and very supportive of other people, but standing up for the screenwriters of America, right? Yes. Screenwriting certainly counts. Thank you, Andrea. So it's great to have you on always, Andrea. And so yeah, yeah, definitely. You know, it's like, that's what I love about comics. They can be so visual, so you can easily see them getting turned into a show. And I can see this getting turned into a show. Absolutely. I can see you also writing into since you can do all your descriptions now, there's a lot of Patrick Stewart and tutus and all the lines. I just know it, you know, deep in there, it's going to happen. You got to throw an Easter egg maybe in the background. And so, but so what's like, since earlier we kind of talked about like, right, the characters that never made it, like, you probably had to change a lot, and Rob, we can get back to you too. You can answer any of the previous ones too, but Carl, you probably had to change a lot over the course of making this. So like, is there anything that or are there any big changes that were made to Spontania over the course of making it?
Yeah, basically what had happened is I find myself making the characters too perfect. So you want to get in there and make them more human. So you start giving them faults and problems and issues. And to me, that's what makes the whole thing real. I mean, I do love the Marvel movies, I admit. But the Marvel TV series that like Netflix did with Daredevil and Punisher, and I thought those were the absolute best.
Oh, I love Daredevil. So absolutely.
Right down to the level. And that's was part of the idea of Spontania, that it was going to be street level, masked hero, not superhero, but masked hero, street level crime fighter. You know, they have a purpose in mind. They have a goal in mind. And that's something I learned from my screenwriting background is, you know, with one word, can you describe the character? And to me, that's one of the most important things, because you look at I was talking to a friend who's a stand-up comic. And I was talking about how you look at the most famous stand-up comics and you can describe their whole personality with one word. You know, it doesn't get very complex. You know, like the TV show Everybody Loves Raymond. Just a quick sample. Raymond was a jerk. But it was great because that's what really made the whole show work. He wasn't a bad guy. He was a nice guy, but he was a jerk. And that's why he screwed up.
That's how they describe me on this show too. I try anyway.
So those are the kind of things that I bring from my screenwriting background. Is what is the core essence of a character, and that helps them make every decision. You know, why Elke was willing to do this crazy thing, dress up in a costume and take her life in her hands. She's kind of a clueless kid. And as it turns out, she feels she made the right decision because she was able to help people along the way. So there's a lot of change and there's a lot of growth in the character. And to me, that's what really makes a good comic work.
Yeah, and I loved that growth in your first issue. I just started reading the second one actually, but I was like, it's like in the first issue, right? It's like getting to see like you know, she kind of starts a little bit like kind of almost a jerk almost at first, and like you said, kind of clueless, but I liked that growing like friendship and with people that you wouldn't necessarily expect her to kind of go into it. And so I can see that direction that you were going for that first one. And so that's part of the fun of it, is that growth piece. And sometimes I think I fail at that a lot of times. A lot of characters I'm like, oh, they're perfect. I don't want them to grow. They're just going to be this way. So well, Rob, what about you? Like bringing your background, like, because a lot of your background is in like horror and different kind of horror stories and short horror stories and His Infernal Name and everything. Those are fantastic, by the way. Check out Rob's books down in the description. But Rob, like how's like coming from your background and some of these other writing forms, like how's that translate into what you ended up doing here?
I think if you look at how Max feels as to what's happening in his town, he would be horrified, and it's a horrifying thing when and it does happen in this country where companies will roll in, and essentially that city becomes in many ways a how do you say it, sort of like a fiefdom, almost like a corporate fiefdom. And like the idea of that actually happening.
Here's this Raccoon City sign up here, as a example.
It's a perfect example because, and it does happen, like, and it's not always a nefarious thing. It's not always quite so terrifying. Like, a company will roll in and be like, okay, we'll give you free internet for, but you just have to let us do these tests and see how this stuff works, which is pretty scary, really. But then you have something on the opposite end, like a Raccoon City. And I think this guy, the Max character, can see tranquility going that way. And that's what scares him so much. So Trent, and that's why I mentioned the idea of Cassandra in the first issue, because he sees it. He knows what's going to happen. He sees these things happening. And the real horror is, what can he do about it? Not a whole lot. But thankfully, Spontania can do something about it. And the people behind Spontania can do something about it. So he's the powerless individual seeing these things happen, but at the same time, desperately hoping that they can change. It's like a Twilight Zone episode, but hopefully hoping for the best in the end for Max anyway. So like approaching it that way is different, right? So like you have the heroes doing their thing, you have the bad guys doing their thing, and then you have the guy in the middle who's seeing all sides, and it's like, oh my God. So that's kind of where the horror comes from for me.
And one of the one of the tricks that I gave Rob was that since we're working with two different timelines in the comic book, I wanted him just to focus on like what was going on in the past, what got us to those first 4 pages where there's a big fight scene going on. And that's the most important thing, because then he gets to really use his skills and say, I don't know what's going on. I don't know where this is going, but it's not good. Yeah. And that's the best, to me, that's the best part of it. Because now your audience that's reading the comic, you're going to grow with everybody else at the same rate.
Yeah, well, I just and another great thing about your comic here, and again, if people are watching and are interested or want to connect with Carl and Rob as well, their books are down in the description, websites down in the description. But because I don't want to like spoil the comic, but it's like what I liked about it is some of that mystery element to it, and a hero is only as good as their villain. And what I like kind of what you set up, you kind of set up this multiple villain idea where it's like, you have this bigger villain, and then you have like an individual that you can actually connect with your villain. This villain also has a history, and so it's like trying to you were kind of building into that. I could see, like I said, I only just started the second issue, and you can see like other villains coming out of this. So is there a particular character that's your favorite before we have to wrap up, because we're running out of time, unfortunately? I'd sit here and pick your brain all day, but is there a particular character that is just super near and dear to you in this one, which is always tough because you're creating them all?
Oh, that is a tough question. It's impossible for me to answer, but I'll tell you this: in issue 7, you're going to meet him.
Okay. It's finally Patrick Stewart in the tutu. Yes. It's like, it's going to happen. I'm going to get in this crowdfunding or something, and I'm going to make you draw Patrick Stewart in a tutu in Spontania. And unfortunately we're just we're just blowing through time here. There's always a million things I want to ask, so we'll have to get you back on here at some point, Carl. It's great
Absolutely.
to have Rob back on. And but before I let both of you guys go, we have your books down in the description. Diabolic Shrimp is a very supportive community of one another, of writers and everything. So like, how else can we support you as an author and a creator?
Oh, okay. Well, the book is now on. The first issue is on Amazon. It's on Kindle. We're going to get the hard copy on there probably this week, and the second issue will be following very shortly. That's really the best thing. It's every little bit counts. The more people that read it, the more people will know about it. Please give me reviews, even if they're bad reviews. I'm okay with that. It's reviews are reviews. I'd love to hear everybody's opinion. I'm easy to find. Comic Book Kid Pub is my Gmail, and it's also .com. comicbookkidpub.com. That's easy for anyone to find.
Nice. And and Rob, you as well. We have both of you guys websites and Amazon links down below, but I know we're just blowing through time. I'm so sorry. I think it's going to cut us off in a second. So Carl, Rob, thank you so much for being on the show.
You.
I'm going to send you back down below. So hang out for just a second. So, well, that was Carl and Rob. And again, their books are down there in the description below. Definitely check those out if you want to check out some of their books, or if you want to reach out to them, you can reach them through their website. You can always leave a comment if you're watching this later. Leave a comment down below. I always love to pass those things on to them. Fantastic comic book. It's a #1 best-selling comic already, and it's only been in its first week and a half or so. And so, I've already read it. I'm going to drop a description, or not a description, but a review as well. And so, thank you, Donna, for fun show. I appreciate it. Thanks, Truth, for William Shatner watering his tomato plants. I don't know what that means, but awesome. And so, well, thank you all for joining us. Those of you that joined us live, if you're joining us later, any of you that want to join us on this journey, I interview interesting and famous people from around the world. And so if you want to join me on that, hit that like and subscribe button down below. But check us out on diabolicshrimp.com. That's the website that this is attached to. We love to share readers with authors and try to connect them up with books that they'll enjoy. But this has been another Diabolic Shrimp. You have a good night.